Despite the glamour of the big top and sawdust ring, the circus is in decline. One reason is that many people are uneasy about performing animals. They believe that what circus animals are trained to do is unnatural, and that the training itself must be cruel. Animal welfare groups would like to see these animal acts banned. But is there an alternative solution that animal lovers can support? In Devon, where she runs an ecological farm, lives Dr. Kiley Worthington. She believes that circuses and zoos are not necessarily cruel. She's just written a book that argues that they can be reformed, so that they're mutually beneficial to animals and to mankind. Her arguments must be taken seriously, as she's an expert on animal behaviour and undoubtedly an animal lover.
I think that one should try and put into practice some of one's ideas. And so I run a farm where we are testing out the types of environments which conform to our ideas of how they ought to be kept. That is, where they have happy, joyful lives the majority of the time and less misery. These horses are kept in family groups. They live in the wild in family groups. We don't keep them in single stables, ever. We run the stallions with them and many of other those kind of techniques. And the same with all the other species. And one of the things that we're hoping to do in the future is to test out the degree to which these animals want voluntarily to associate with us. We know dogs often do. Do other species too want to be with us and choose our company as opposed to the company of their own fellows?
As far as possible, Mart shares her life with all kinds of animals. And as she's grown to know them better, she's been increasingly frustrated by the muddled attitudes demonstrated by so many well-intentioned animal lovers.
We're tremendously inconsistent. We have one set of values for wild animals, one for domestic, one for farm animals, one for pets and companion animals, one for horses, which are different again, one for race horses, and one for children's ponies, etc., etc. You know, every species, every individual of every species seems to have a completely inconsistent set of ethics and values and ways of measuring cruelty. Physical cruelty, it's easy to measure, but psychological cruelty is much more difficult to measure.
So you're saying that if we were consistent, if we're going to ban animals in entertainment, then you're also going to ban them in horse racing, in dog racing?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think you can, there are arguments that you can make to be consistent about having nothing to do with animals at all. And some philosophers have made these arguments quite strongly.
In that we do not use them in any way?
We don't have anything to do with them and we don't use them in any way. They exist out there in the wild yonder doing their own thing, and that's as it should be. But that isn't really, from my point of view, how it should be, partly because I like animals and I want to be with animals, and I think probably you do too, and many of the viewers probably do. I feel one gains so much from the interaction with animals. One learns about, it's a bit like learning about a different human culture, I suppose, learning about how a llama interacts or how a dog behaves and so on. So I think we can, both the animals and the humans can have tremendous advantage from that interaction, and also it is ecologically sound. A species does not exist in a vacuum. It exists as part of a network of relationships between species. And we are one of them. We are not separate, we're not special, we just happen to be very manipulative primates. But who knows if we're doing greater things with our head than your holler is here.
Go on, get over!
As an authority on animal welfare, Mart was commissioned to carry out an independent scientific study of circus animals and spent hundreds of hours behind the scenes in many British circuses, including the Roberts brothers.
I have a soft spot for Bobby Roberts because he was the one who enabled me to enter into circuses and to do my first field work for my book on animals in circuses and zoos.
Here. And here. Beverly here. No, other one, other one. Here. Right, back.
One of the things, Bobby, that the circus couldn't contribute to our understanding of animals is investigating what we call animal cognition, which is animal thinking.
I'm glad you translated it.
So, the first thing is, do you think they think?
Oh, yes, they think like we think.
Yeah. Like we think? You think they think like we think?
A lot of things, yes, they think about. It's like any animal can think. Here, come here, you two. Come here. Maureen here. Janie here. If they didn't think, they couldn't learn things.
Right. Could you say to Maureen, lie down, and she'd understand the concept of lying down?
That's right. She would do, but sometimes it's in the situation. If you wanted them to lie down in the middle of a field, that's a different thing.
Right.
In the ring, they know it's a routine every day, but to make them like, just try it.
Yeah.
Maureen here. Lie down. Lie down. Lie down, quick. Lie down. Lie down. Lie down. Lie down. No, that's not. Lie down. Lie down. Lie down. Here, lie down. No, lie down. Lie down. Lie down. Lie down. Lie down. Sit up. Sit up.
There's a girl. There's
Sit.
a good girl.
Sit up. Sit. I didn't say get up. Get up. All right, get up. All right, get up.
Try saying get up in a very gentle way. Oh, well, it's too late now. I'm just trying to see whether she's going to respond to the actual consonants of the words, or whether it's,
I think it is the word they know, you know.
Yes.
Beverly, come here.
My feeling is that she's responding to the words, but she's not necessarily feeling like doing it.
That's a good girl.
Good way.
Oh, yeah. The thing is, it's like a kid. If nobody taught them, nobody showed them how to hold a thing, how to do it. It's the same thing, really, with the elephants.
If you were training a horse, how different would you think about how the horse is going to think about this situation compared to when you're thinking about training an elephant or handling an elephant or whatever?
That's the biggest thing, is handling it.
Yeah.
Is getting it used to any sort of situations and getting it that it comes to you. And at the end of the day, it wants to do it for you.
While studying conditions in circuses, Mart made comparisons with zoo animals, and she's frequently called in to give advice on how their living conditions can be improved. On a visit to Paynton Zoo, there's a chance to discuss with director Peter Stevens some of the perennial problems he faces with the animals and the public.
The breeding capacity and also the ability to show these animals to the public, and also hopefully to learn something about them.
What are the public going to learn about chimpanzees looking here?
Well, first of all, what they look like, how big they are, what noises they make, and their movements, and one can see a lot more of their behavioural pattern continuously than what one can, I think, on television.
Particularly, they'll learn something about their behaviour if they spend enough time, won't they?
Well, that is a problem that they don't, I think.
Right,
this is
they
fair
sort
enough.
of drift past.
Not even drift past, rush past almost. This is a problem if the children say, let's go on to the next one, or let's have an ice cream. It was built about 20 years ago in the late 60s, and the whole idea was to depict an Ethiopian landscape.
Zoo animals pose a distinct set of practical and ethical problems. Compared to circuses, living conditions are almost always superior, but animals still suffer mental stress. This can be reduced by devising activities to relieve the boredom of their captivity.
It's not terribly exciting from the animal point of view.
It is Spartan.
And some things, one might be able to suggest some things which would improve it from the animal's point of view a bit, and perhaps from the public's, because then they might be doing different things.
Yes.
One of the things is to put a rope that they can swing from one outcrop to the next on, something like that.
Yes.
Yes.
We do put in hay and straw, which has the seeds and raisins and that sort of thing, small pieces of food thrown in with it, so they've got to hunt for it and spend some time chasing around.
What would your attitude be if one were to put in nuts that they couldn't crack, but you gave them some tool that they might be able to use to crack the nuts, and maybe they would use
nice experiment to see if they're able to work out a way of
they've got all the
into
time in the world.
Exactly.
Exactly.
In the circus, animals do not spend the entire time confined to the same cage. At least there's the variety that comes from daily training sessions and performances and the demands made by having to learn new acts. We went with Mart to look behind the scenes at the world's greatest, the Moscow State Circus. And since Mart is herself an animal trainer, she was keen to talk to these star trainers of the circus world and to work with them.
Good. That's enough. Suppose we take these off. Without these, try take these off.
Undo.
Now we try up.
Huh?
Try up.
Once more?
Maybe. Try you. There you are, you see? Work. Good boy. You can do it, huh? Very good trainer when you can do without. This, I think, is a very interesting act. I've not seen horses jumping on and off a moving trailer in this way, and it certainly does take some training and some confidence in the trainer for the horses to do this. On the other hand, I don't think they're learning anything new. I think this isn't really training. This is going through their paces. And one of the positive things that training can do is stimulate the animals intellectually. But to do this, they must continue to learn new things all the time, not just repeat old ones.
Unlike human performers, so the critics say, circus animals are taught to do tricks that have nothing to do with their natural repertoire. That however well they're treated, such performances are unnatural and unedifying.
A child doesn't naturally learn to read and write. He has to be taught to read and write. And we usually universally consider that education is a good thing. The reason why we think that is because it'll broaden his horizons when he can read and write. He'll have a better life. It'll be better for him. He'll have more ideas and be able to do more different things and all that kind of thing. Well, I wonder why we shouldn't have that attitude to animals too. Is it absolutely unlikely that they have any possibility of having an intellectual life? I mean, why should they not also be able to benefit more from the world they're in if they have a more exciting mental life? These large herbivores have enormous forebrains, or relatively large forebrains, with lots of convolutions, a very big surface area.
A big brain you're talking about.
A big forebrain,
yeah.
A big part of the brain which is supposed to be concerned with rational thought and learning, the sort of part of the brain that we humans are very proud of, or we're supposed to be. And it's supposed to be bigger in us than anything else. Well, relatively it is, but they have bigger ones than one would expect them to need to have for the sort of life we believe they lead, which is sort of munching around and cudding and having a bit of social life and sex and this and that, you know, but nothing terribly intellectually exciting. Well, why do they have those big brains then? I mean, what is the evolutionary reason for that? And one has to consider that maybe there may be all sorts of things going on in those brains that we actually can't cue into because we're stuck in being humans. This is a sort of act which I think is great fun and works very well. This is where the animals are coming off best. So it isn't necessarily dominating the animals that the audience like to see. In fact, perhaps it's the other way round. Perhaps what people really want to see is the animals working with the humans or even getting the upper hand of their human trainers.
The strongest argument against animal acts in circuses is that the cages and the so-called beast wagons are cruelly cramped and inadequate.
The keeping conditions of the animals in the Russian circuses I find appalling. They are antediluvian and 18th century. There's absolutely no reason why they should be in these small cages. This does not mean that circuses must be outlawed. It simply means that they must be improved. The question is, how do we do it? Well, here are some drawings that I have made of the sorts of ways to improve the environments for the animals. Here, the big cats are able to leave their beast wagons and go out into a large exercise area.
Properly housed, this polar bear might not be performing this stereotypy, the purposeless and repeated head movements that are sure signs of distress. When I went with Mark to Moscow Zoo to see keeping conditions there, I asked her which was better off, the bears in the circus or those at the zoo.
Both of them are not good enough, frankly. The difference is perhaps that the zoo knows that's the case and the circus doesn't quite so obviously know that's the case. The circus animals have an opportunity of having some handling, some intellectual stimulation, some occupational therapy in the fact that they're out of their cages for a short time each day and they're doing a performance, but nothing like enough. And their keeping conditions are very bad. They're very small and quite inadequate in many, many different ways. The bear here is in a slightly larger cage, but it's the same cage for 24 hours a day. And it's dull and it doesn't have complex, the only stimulus he has is people like us coming to make films.
What do you think of the conditions that this cheetah's living in?
They're a rare breed, of course, so that's one of the things that they're particularly concerned with this zoo, is trying to breed them. So I think they've done not too badly. I think there are improvements that could be made. One of the problems with cheetahs often is that they don't have enough exercise. They are the primordial plains predator. So one way in which you could increase the amount of exercise they have is by giving them a mechanical toy to hunt, a mechanical antelope or something. You could also...
All right. She's all right. All right. She got a fright then. What she did then was actually to punch the microphone.
People want to see other humans interacting with animals, and they also want to interact with them themselves. That's why a television film doesn't tell the whole story and doesn't do the same job. It does certain jobs, but it doesn't do the same job as a zoo or a circus, particularly a circus, where there's a direct contact between the individual human and the individual animal.
It's the big cats that are the animal stars at the circus. Because lions and tigers are big and wild and potentially dangerous, they provide the biggest thrills. That's the assumption. But these acts are also especially controversial. Some people who are quite content to see performing horses or dogs find this sort of thing unacceptable. They find it hard to believe that these tigers can be trained at all without instilling in them fear of the trainer. Indeed, the dominance of the trainer is an integral part of the show.
Too many animal acts are centered around the notion that the human dominates the animal. The human is representing himself as a macho man who can dominate these great big wild tigers. Now, I don't think that this is an appropriate act. I think the animals need to represent themselves as what they are, beautiful, athletic, lithe, intelligent creatures, rather than big cats who are dominated by macho men.
As we discovered next day, our misgivings about that tiger act were confirmed by this training session at the Moscow State Circus.
I think this is absolutely appalling, unacceptable, and disastrous. In hundreds of hours of watching big cats being trained, I have never seen anything like this. In fact, I've never seen a big cat hit in a British circus.
Eyebrows! Eyebrows, brows! Brows, brows. Is debiel. Stukken debiel?
There is no need to consider that circuses inevitably involve this kind of training. It is not so. There are bad trainers like there are bad parents, but that doesn't stop us all having children and being parents. Let's hope that we can improve on training systems. Right. I believe it's perfectly possible to train an animal without cruelty, goading, using whips and unpleasantness. The point is, most animals, once you have a good relationship with them, will work to please you in one way or another. And if you can't do it, then don't do it. Go away and get a job doing something else. Right. Da 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 da. Yes, come on. Right. Good girl. Bravo.
Mart believes not only that good training is never cruel, but that it should be enjoyable and beneficial for both animal and trainer. Furthermore, she makes no distinction between wild and domestic animals. All, she believes, can benefit.
Clever girl. Whoopsie. All right, come on, once more. Steady. No, no, no. You're getting a bit bored, aren't you? It's gone on a bit.
I suppose the attention span of a cow is not that perfect.
Well, any more than 'tis of a child, eh? So many people believe that it's essential to use nasty methods and cruelty to make the animals do things in circuses. And there are indeed cases where this happens, as we've seen. But it isn't necessarily the case. It has to be like that. There are good trainers too, and there have been through history, but let us go forward and understand more about training. So I think it argues for improvements in circuses and zoos, but not banning them any more than you ban dogs as pets, or because there's terrible bad pet keepers. There will always be animals misused, like there are children misused. But if we knew a lot more about training and had some guidelines on how animals ought to be kept and what they should be allowed to do, then that would become less likely. And I don't see any argument to support the contention that using animals in performance is much worse than using animals in gymkhanas or for pets or for pulling ploughs or anything else. That's really where we have to start thinking, and I hope that that's the valuable part of the work that I've done, is trying to work out baselines on how we're going to measure distress and how we should keep animals. So that we can go on associating living in the real world with them. They're all part of the biosphere like we are, after all, and they've got as much right to be here as we have. So why should we just think of them in terms of human use or human exploitation or whatever? And similarly, why should we only think of them as completely themselves out there and nothing to do with us? I mean, ecology is the study of interrelatedness of things, and that's the way life works. So why don't we get down and try and sort it out somehow? And enjoy it, for heaven's sake. It's got to be fun, hasn't it?
Nature Watch returns in a fortnight at the same time.